Hi, this is Lex, and welcome to the Fintech Blueprint. It's your podcast about fintech, decentralized finance, digital banking, investing, robo-advice, artificial intelligence, and all the other frontier technology that is transforming financial services. To get more content, like an illustrated transcript of this conversation in your inbox, subscribe at fintechblueprint.com. So without further delay, let's jump into today's episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast conversation with Sandy Carter. I'm really excited to talk to her. She's the Chief Operating Officer of Unstoppable Domains, a really interesting and quickly growing Web3 company, as well as Sandy's got amazing experience across the tech sector, and we'll talk about that as well. Sandy, welcome to the conversation.
Lex, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm really looking forward to it. So let's start with kind of your DNA, your professional DNA. You have this combination of general management and marketing and technology. Can you talk about some of the foundational experiences you've had before you got into Web3 and crypto? Like, what companies did you work for? What kinds of things did you do?
Yeah, I love the way you phrase that too, Lex. What's your DNA? I really like that. So I think the first set of experiences that I had before I came into Web3 that has really benefited me is around emerging tech. I actually, at IBM, started our initiative around SOA, or service-oriented architecture, which you probably know the cloud is built on today. And so as I started looking at kind of the next generation of technology, what kind of things matter, I think I've really applied that throughout my career. I later went on and was one of the first in AI, working with Watson. If you can remember Watson, when AI was cool and then it kind of disappeared and then it's come back. I've worked with the cloud in very early stages with Amazon Web Services. In fact, I set up the division to work with cloud for the enterprise, which required some innovation and new emerging tech to ensure that you could leverage cloud with existing companies. And then, of course, AR, VR, IoT, which is augmented reality, virtual reality, and then Internet of Things. So I think part of my DNA is looking at what's the next thing, what's that next emerging tech look like, what's that next innovation that's going to add value for customers. That really leads me to, I think, the second part of my DNA, which is focused on customer first, not technology first, but customer first. I know it may sound a little contradictory because I just said I love the emerging tech, but I like applying it in customer situations. So one of my very, very first experiences was with Bank of America, and I was in the tech side, and they had asked me to help with a teller application. Now, many of you may not even know what a bank teller is, but it's a person who's in the bank, who works in the bank, who takes money and transactions. I don't even use a teller anymore.
There are people that are trapped in the bank. We need to help them. How do we get them out?
Oh, it's so funny, right? Yeah. But they, teller used to be like the main point of contact. This was when ATMs had just started, but a lot of people only trusted a person. And so the whole team that I was on writing this teller application, I kept asking them, but what does a teller do? Like, who knows what the requirements are? And nobody did. So I happened to be, very curious about it. And so I asked if I could go work as a bank teller for a month so I could figure out what they did so I could write a better application. The request went all the way up to the top of the bank, which at that time was Hugh McCall. And he thought it was very fascinating that someone in tech wanted to go do something in business. So they granted my request. I worked as a bank teller for a month. And it really enabled me then as a technologist to do something that is now called product management, to really understand the requirements of the customer, document those from a customer's perspective, not a technology perspective, and then deliver a solution. And so I did that not only as the bank teller, I was working on that whole set of software on that side, but later for ATMs and check processing and all that kind of stuff for a banking or a financial institution. And that's where I really gleaned that this product management role was really a secret sauce or a superpower that companies needed. And I later found when I joined Amazon Web Services, they felt the same way. I did product management for a couple of our enterprise areas. And that product management role is still today a secret of success. People really understanding the customer, developing a product from a customer's perspective versus a technology perspective, where you have a bunch of engineers sitting in their offices or their garages and coding away and then delivering something and say, okay, now sell this, versus starting with the customer first and working backwards from the customer and then delivering something. So I think that's now also in my DNA from working as a quote unquote bank teller from IT to leading product management and some of the work for enterprise with Amazon Web Services, and now really helping bring some of that customer first or customer obsession into Unstoppable as well.
I want to ask you a little bit more about your experience in the large technology companies, because you were in senior roles across IBM and Amazon. And I'm interested in this challenge that a large tech firm has in seeing the future. Like, when you've got a big software business, how easy or difficult was it for these companies to say, it's 2000 and now we're looking at e-commerce, or now we're looking at the startup ecosystem and AI, or it's about enterprise cloud? Like, how did you carve that out for yourself in a firm like that? And what does it feel like to try and articulate a new hypothesis within the structure of a large tech firm?
Well, I have to say, I was very, I don't know, you say good, lucky and good, which one matters most? There's a whole book that surmises that being lucky is one of the greatest traits, right? Being at the right place at the right time, which really isn't luck. You position yourself there. And at IBM, one of the senior vice presidents, he reported directly to the CEO of IBM. He and I got along really well. He had assigned me this SOA project, service-oriented architecture project, and thought, wow, you did great at coming up with something brand spanking new, not just kind of running the norm. So I want to try you on a second project and then a third project. And so for me, I was given this startup-like team at IBM, and we really innovated in a couple of very special areas for IBM around technology. I know it's crazy because I'm mostly go-to-market, but I do hold patents. And that's because of some of the new algorithms and new techniques that we found in some of those areas. So I think there it was really almost being protected or shielded by an SVP who enabled me to move fast, act like an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, and be able to innovate on some of the newest technologies that exist out there. That's how we were able to get doing creative things like having Watson play Jeopardy. Like, that's very unusual for a very large tech company to even attempt something like that. So very creative, very different. And then at Amazon Web Services, I love Amazon because Amazon Web Services is like a whole bunch of little startups inside of a bigger architecture. And so they really set you up to think like a startup, to act like a startup. They starve you like a startup too, right? You don't have enough money. You always are thinking frugal. You do have what they call a single threaded perspective, which means you get to make all the decisions. You don't have to ask for permission. You don't have 3 other people in a matrix that you have to go get agreement from. They try to set you up in a single threaded structure so you can make the decisions and then you can move really fast. And, that really enabled us to innovate on some really sexy technologies at Amazon Web Services, like, Deep Racer. We were challenged with how to get more skills into the marketplace on reinforcement learning, which is one of the techniques for training, a learning model in AI. And, we started out with, let's have all these classes, let's train more university professors, let's, build education facilities. But as we kept asking questions, as we do at Amazon, we've determined that having something fun and something that was wildly applicable, not just for someone going to school, maybe someone without computer science training would be the right way. And so the team created this Deep Racer car, which is a car with IoT sensors on it. In order to race it around the track, it was a physical car. In order to race it around the track, you had to program it with reinforcement learning. Made that really simple, almost like a no-code version, so anybody could do it. But at the same time, they were learning concepts of AI. That became a big hit. We not only had racing leagues that formed, we had, company CEOs of banks challenging their dev teams to a reinforcement learning contest. And so it really enabled us to innovate. I would say of all the companies I've worked for, Amazon Web Services has been the best at encouraging innovation and giving you the control you need to go make a decision, not having a controlled centralized location, but really having multiple pods of decision making. So innovation takes place all over the company. And so, from really creative things like that to, one of the big challenges in software at AWS was license management. Not sexy, not really cool, but very lucrative. So I also led a team that helped us to develop some of the license management work that we do, which is, taking old software licenses, transactional, and converting them into cloud-based approach. So I think, each of the companies, the large companies I worked for, had great ways to help encourage you on technology. Even Bank of America. I mean, if you think back how, forward-looking that CEO was to allow a tech person to go work as a teller so she could learn straight from the customer what the job was really like. I think all of those really yielded the same thing, which was customer first or customer obsessed, being a little isolated, like at IBM, where the SVP protected me, or Amazon Web Services, where they had more of a structured approach to setting up those little startups. So really operating as an entrepreneur inside of a large company.
Both of the frames you've provided, the customer centricity and emerging tech, lead us to Web3 and unstoppable domains. There's, I think, complexity on both of those themes. But before we get there, can you tell us how you first came across Web3 and what pulled you towards joining Unstoppable Domains? And then, what is the product, the service that the company provides?
I think it's a great story because I was experimenting with blockchain at Amazon Web Services. I was looking at regulated industries at that time. Blockchain was being used in financial services. Now, this isn't Web3, this is Web2, using an experiment with blockchain. And regulated, you had healthcare, which you see a lot of hospitals with supply chain using blockchain for the ledger capability. And then even public sector, like DoD, using blockchain for security and not having a centralized location for data. And so all of those, I started to see emerge across, my partnerships, my customers, and what they were doing. And so I was asked to really, take a look at some of that stuff.
Was this on the Amazon blockchain as a service platform or where?
And a lot of people don't know that a lot of the Web3 blockchains actually run on Amazon Web Services today. A lot of it was blockchains that existed and still exist in the marketplace today who are running on AWS, as well as our own, or I guess I should say now their own. They have different types of blockchain services as well. So it was really both. We're looking at both of those. We actually had, some of the very first blockchain companies like Coinbase came and presented at a Amazon reInvent, I think back in 2017, maybe even 16, on what they were doing, everything on, AWS.
Just to open that up, let's say there's an infrastructure provider like an Infura or an Alchemy, which runs nodes on behalf of developers. Developers will API into those nodes when they write their software, but then those nodes will be hosted on Amazon or another cloud provider. And so the actual cloud infrastructure for a lot of the protocol nodes are sitting in these locations.
That's absolutely right. AWS, part of my mission at AWS was to look at startups. And so a lot of the startups that we worked with and leveraged were using blockchains. And the way we got to those companies was that they had their infrastructure built on AWS. That's right.
Unstoppable Domains is a really interesting company and is offering a service that it's a requirement for businesses that are trying to work on Web3. Can you tell us about what the product is and how it works?
We have, I guess, an offering, I would say, which is very specific to digital identity. We actually like to chat about it as a digital identity platform. And the reason that that's important is that digital identity in a Web3 world is a little bit different than in a Web2 world. And we as Unstoppable have really made it our mission, our purpose to deliver that digital identity to every person on the planet. We want people to own their own data and to own their own digital identity. So, for example, in the Web2 world today, when you go and sign into, let's say, a Google or a TikTok or a Instagram, you're logging in with your username and password, and that is your digital identity. But then all the data as you're logged in belongs to the platform pretty much. There are some exceptions, but pretty much the data belongs to that platform. And that's why you see companies like Facebook and Google monetizing that data to the tune of $100 billion because they own the data. I don't know if you've seen some of the recent news, but they can actually charge you for using some of your own data. Or if that company doesn't make it and they go under, you lost your data because it's not really your data, it's their data. So now if you fast forward to Web3, in the Web3 world, you own your data. You get to decide who gets access to it, when, how much, and how long. So your data is very easy for you to access. You can share it when you want to. And not only that, but now you have a simpler and easier way to log into applications. So you log in, like my ID, which you see on the screen, is sandy.nft. Sandy.nft, I can use that to log into about 600 different applications around the world, from Cook Finance, which is a decentralized finance or DeFi application, to a metaverse or game like Snook, which is really popular in Asia right now, to maybe an application for doing my taxes. Or, last night I was just playing around with a new kind of management tool for your NFTs, and I was able to use sandy.nft to log into that. And again, I decide what data I want to share with that application or with that company. It's all up to me and what I want to do. So our mission and our purpose is really big, given we want to get a digital identity into the hands of every person. Today, we have 3.5 million digital identities out there. So we have lots of runway and rampway to go to have everyone on the planet, own their own identity.
And what does it mean in this case? One of the things that I started to use as an analogy is, the story of, and maybe this is a little bit too much of a crypto view, probably it is, but the story of non-custodial finance, where in custodial finance, if you have assets, you're holding them somewhere else. You're holding them at a bank or at an asset manager. Let's say you're holding them at Silicon Valley Bank or FTX or Credit Suisse. And that institution gives you a receipt for your assets. And if the institution has a problem, then it has to be bailed out by a government. Maybe it will collapse. Maybe it'll just disappear. And so that custodial nature, while it's marketed to make you feel safe, somebody's watching out for you, in reality creates a risk that you don't actually have something that you own. So these non-custodial services in Web3 and DeFi are a positive because you get to control your assets. So for example, if you have a physical wallet with cash in your pocket, that is a non-custodial control of your assets. But data in the digital world is an asset just like cash. And so I kind of think of it as, non-custodial data, where the custodians of our data today, which are many of the large tech firms you've mentioned, Google, TikTok, Facebook, and so on, Meta, are holding our data on our behalf. But that comes with a lot of compromises, and there are many advantages of getting our stuff back into the wallet, into your pocket, digitally. Can you talk about what unstoppable domains means when you say your digital identity? Like, how does the thing work? The ability to log into these 600 apps, what is it that a person has to do to enable that?
Let's back up just for a second. So you own your own data. So Unstoppable is built on a concept called a decentralization. That is enabled by the blockchain. And that means that the data can be shared across a variety of different networks instead of being held in a single central location or a single central server. Like Lex said, this makes it more secure and it gives you as a user more control over your data and also more protection of your personal information from unauthorized access or unauthorized use. And I think it's becoming even more and more important as we see the next generation grow up. My two daughters are very much value digital ownership, but also very much privacy. Like, for example, neither one of my daughters want me to post pictures of them online. Whereas I think before people would post everything, including what they ate. But they're very interested in data privacy. And I think, that's really linked very closely to owning your data, because I think data privacy is the right to decide who can access and who can use your data, which is all built into what we have in Unstoppable. So as a user, I'm going to go now to your direct question, Lex. As a user, if you want to log into another application, it's very simple for you as a user because we enable you to use it just like today you might use to log in an application, Google or Facebook or others. Here you just type in sandy.nft. You do connect it to your wallet, which is a crypto wallet. And once that's done, then you just type in sandy.nft and can log in. So as a user, it's that simple as using any Web2 tool today. On the other side of the equation, from the application, let's say the Web3 application, the Web3 application does have to integrate with an API that we've developed that will enable them to resolve sandy.nft in the correct way and ensure that it protects the data. So the work, Lex, for logging in from an unstoppable domain is really all on the business side or the partner side to do that integration work. We've made it really simple and very easy for the user. And just as a factoid, just for one of the functions or one of the use cases that we talk about for Unstoppable, which is resolving a crypto wallet. So that means taking sandy.nft and resolving that into the string of letters and characters that represents your wallet. So that's resolving sandy.nft into the string of characters, or vice versa, taking the string of characters that represents your wallet and converting that into sandy.nft. We do 30 million resolution API calls a week. So that's 30 million a week. So you can see that this is really well used. And again, on the user side, simply easy, no complicated tech. On the partner or company side, they have to do the integration.
So let's say I have a MetaMask account, I'm logged in, and I want to get an Unstoppable domain to represent my identity. What do I do? Is it like an NFT that I buy? Is it some smart contract that I'm signing? What's going on?
So as a user, you would go to the Unstoppable domain site. You would select your digital identity. So like for me, I have sandy.nft. You would purchase that digital identity. And then you would go into the management screen and you would manage your identity by connecting it up with a wallet or multiple wallets. At Unstoppable, we today support 170 wallets, which I think is very impressive. So it could be, Rainbow Wallet or some of the newer ones like Croesus and Timeless or Trust Wallet, which has been around for a while. You set that up in your management profile. Once you do that, and let's say you choose Rainbow or Phantom, let's just pick one wallet, then as you go into that, let's say as you go to transact and you connect to your Phantom wallet, all you need to do as the user is then type sandy.nft to do the transaction. So as a user, really the only task is to set up your digital identity with that connection to the wallet. If you want to transact, there are more things to set up in there if you want to have your brand out there and connect to a website. But in order to transact with a wallet, it's that simple.
As an analogy, it's almost like in the case of Venmo, if I want to send money using somebody's phone account, they set up a Venmo account, but then Venmo takes care of all the connections to the underlying like financial routers. And so here you're creating an identity that allows you to much more casually have sort of internet experiences, but they can be connected underneath to a whole bunch of blockchain infrastructure for asset movement.
That is a great analogy. I wish I had used that. So I'm going to save that. That is correct. That's a great analogy to for someone who's in the Web2 world. That's right. And it's super simple to set up your, I know it sounds scary, your management profile. It's really easy. You go in there and you can set up, for example, an Ethereum wallet or a Polygon wallet. And that could, there's tons of what we call EVM or Ethereum wallets. I could also set up a Solana wallet or Hedera wallet, and I could have all of those locked with my digital identity. But if you don't mind, I'd also like to move on. I think that was the very first use case, which was around crypto. But now we're seeing not just that kind of crypto exchange being used with your digital identity, but also more of your brand as well. So you can also go into that management page and set up something called your unstoppable profile. And that's really, really a way to brand yourself with verifiable data. I think that's the real key, is that it's verified and credentialed data. But I can link in there maybe some tokens, NFTs, digital collectibles that I have collected to showcase who I am. So what's an equivalent in Web 2 land? So in Web 2 land, you have, let's say, LinkedIn that might represent you as a brand. But in Web 2 land, when you put something on your LinkedIn profile, there's no verification, right? I could go and put in there, hey, I went to Harvard. There's no verification that I actually went to Harvard. And in fact, LinkedIn tells us that 40% of people who say they went to Harvard didn't go to Harvard. On the flip side, in an unstoppable domain, when you're looking at your digital identity, your data is credentialed. So if I took a Web3 class and I get an NFT, it's soul bound, which means that it's tied to me. I can't transfer it. So I can prove that I took the class. Another great example, which I know recently was a huge topic on social media, was, who really supports ESG and climate? Because almost every company today has on their website or on their LinkedIn profile, we're all about the climate, but nobody verifies that or credentials that. As opposed to, let's go to unstoppable domains. There's a company called Nori, one example, that provides verification that I planted a tree for every NFT I own. And that's verified. It's soul bound. I can't transfer it to you, Lex. So I could use it one day and you can use it the next. It's mine. And so you can go in and see, I might say I support the climate, but you can go and see verifiably, do I actually support the climate? One more example, sports, which I found quite interesting. I'm living right now in Phoenix, Arizona. We hosted the Super Bowl this year. I had the opportunity to go to a couple of breakfasts, and I didn't get to the Super Bowl, but I was talking to some of the NFL officials, especially on the ticketing side, and they told me that people will put on their LinkedIn timeline or Twitter or Instagram that they were at the Super Bowl. And he said that we went through one year and added it all up, and the football stadium would have been oversold by 5 times. Those people never went to the Super Bowl. So you don't have a way to verify that what they said was true. And so here, and again, let's go to Unstoppable. If you got an NFT from the Super Bowl and it sat inside of one of your many wallets that you had connected to your profile, you can verify that I went to the Super Bowl. I didn't just say I went to the Super Bowl. I actually attended the Super Bowl. And so that's one of the things that a lot of companies love here about what's happening with blockchain-based identities, is that you can verify the information. It gives you that digital identity that lives on the blockchain. You can use that to validate information. The blockchain enables it because it's immutable. You can't change it. It's transparent. You can use that digital identity to sign pieces of content about yourselves to validate that that content is real. And so, this technology exists today, which is really exploding because of AI as well.
There's so many interesting things to say about this, and I want to prime you a little bit to talk about the metaverse themes and the AI themes. And is getting less popular to say those words out loud, but we have to do it anyway. The things that come to mind for me are, first, the ability to actually have digital truth is increasingly more important all the time. So we've been using the web for a while, and we've been generating lots of digital exhaust, whether it's our search intents or our clicks, our media, whatever it is. And it's gotten to such a crazy scale that figuring out what is real and what is not real is increasingly difficult. And with the introduction of generative AI, the amount of things that are absolutely not real is only going to go more exponential. So having some way to actually mark a fact, an actual event, some version of a truth, but in a way that is digital and persists on the systems of record that matter rather than the systems of record that don't, and increasingly the systems of record that matter are digital and the physical ones don't matter as much. The need to be able to actually verify and show some sort of credential or be able to say, yeah, this is the real version of it. This actually happened. This is the authentic event or authentic object in a digital space. The need for that is only going to continue to increase given the types of technologies that are now in play. I'd love kind of your reflection on that. And then I'll prime the other topic too, which is to ask what kinds of commerce and interactions you see between people that are using your platform. But maybe we'll start with the first question.
I love your wording, by the way. Digital truth is great and digital exhaust. So I think those are really cool. Here's how I would frame the problem. There are becoming more and more and more sophisticated AI solutions that are really easy to use, really easy to access, and very convincing. I was playing, because I'm a geek girl, I was playing with some last weekend, and I actually made a video of my husband just for fun that my daughters couldn't even detect that it wasn't my husband communicating a message. So these deep fakes are becoming increasingly common, and anybody, and myself can do it, even though I have no studio background or design background or that sort of thing. And we already know that many of these have become manipulated images and used to confuse people, right? So one example, which I really love, is I actually posted myself. I was at a premiere event in LA and it was cold. I only had my puffer jacket with me. I posted a picture of myself in a puffer jacket and people started commenting on it. And afterwards, truly, the Pope was also pictured on Twitter in a puffer jacket and people thought it was real. People were tweeting about it and, tagging people. It was all over Instagram. But in reality, it became known that that was a deep fake. It really wasn't the Pope in a puffer jacket. So these tools used by bad actors really created mistrust. In fact, so much so that once people found out that it wasn't the Pope in the jacket, people started coming after me saying I had posted something that was also a deep fake and mine was actually real. So not only did it create mistrust and harm for the people who posted about the puffer and the Pope, I got backlash from that too, because people thought I also had posted a deep fake, which wasn't true. And so people now are really concerned about what is real and what's not. And if you have a bad actor who is doing this to create mistrust and harm, it really hurts the entire tech industry. And we as tech individuals, Lex, you and I both, need to be thinking about what solutions we can use and build to help them. So as I talked about earlier, a lot of this can be solved today through the blockchain. And at Unstoppable, we're working really hard to give a solution that gives you that digital identity that exists on the chain so that you can validate that that information is real. So I don't know if I want to go here, but let's just take politics, right? A simple example is a message at the end of a political ad that says, hey, I'm such and such politician and I approve that message. It would be technically really easy to copy that clip, paste it into fake content, and leading people to believe that an ad is real when it's really not. But you can't copy a blockchain sequence. So if people learn to look for a signature from the person being quoted or being interviewed, or if they're given a speech, giving them another data point to validate that that content is legitimate and not a deep fake becomes more and more valuable. And this is one of the reasons why when I talk about AI, because I know AI from working on it at AWS and IBM, the power of Web3 and blockchain with AI to me is the winning combination. It's not AI by itself, and in some cases not Web3 by itself. It's that combination that is powerful. And, we'll also add metaverse in there too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really difficult to, or maybe it's not, to persuade the large AI incumbents to, how do I put it in the most colorful language, to bend the knee to open source Web3 data authenticity and verification, right? Like if you've got the mega brain of OpenAI at the top of your skyscraper tower, why would you say, sure, let me allow Ethereum or some other network to be the judge of whether what we do is good or bad? How do you see that dynamic play out? And I know it's a bit of a dangerous question and hard to tell, but it's clearly like these opposites, right? Of who's developing AI versus some of the mission of Web3.
Are you proposing that you're switching control from one element to another? Is that the question?
In the way that a central bank may not want Bitcoin to become the world's global currency, I think a large AI provider may not want Web3 to be the source of truth. For Google, for example, it just adds friction to be validated by some sort of open source decentralized solution. They've got fast centralized servers, they've got the data. Why would they put a limit on what they can do by introducing Web3 tools?
So far, actually, what I've noticed, and in fact, even last night, I wrote a little post at LinkedIn and a little blog about how you could use your digital identity for this. I actually awoke this morning to like 7 AI companies who said, this is one of our biggest inhibitors. All the enterprise customers are asking us now, how can we detect the truth or not the truth given all these AI tools? And, could we talk to you about doing an integration or something like that? So I haven't seen the pushback that you're saying today. And I think most companies, like a Google, for instance, Google Cloud, understand that Web3 is decentralized. So there isn't a central authority, but that the technology itself could help and solve some of these problems and create solutions for one of the biggest blockers today. I was just reading a survey. I think it came from maybe EY, maybe Deloitte. I can't remember. One of them, they were talking about blockers for enterprises, adopting AI. And in the top 2, the number 1 was I need to protect my data, right? I don't want to be training a chat GPT on my data and then having my competitor being able to use my data to learn. The second one, though, was about deepfakes. How do I know what I'm seeing, looking at, listening to is real? And so I think they're looking for solutions to solve that problem right now. I don't think they're viewing it as another friction point, but as a way to solve one of the biggest blockers for overall enterprise adoption.
I've been interested in the metaverse concept, not from necessarily the perspective of Apple and its spatial operating system, not from the perspective of Meta, Zuckerberg, and your social gaming network inside of a VR headset, but from the perspective of there's a digital place. I mean, that's true whether it's in VR, AR, or on a 2D screen, and you're on Twitter. So there's a digital place in which we spend time, which I think is undeniable. And then in that digital place, we have our social reputation, we have our labor, and we have digital objects that we create from our labor. And then the exchange of these digital objects has some sort of commerce that comes out of it. And you're starting to see previews of exchange and markets around digital objects or non-fungible tokens, NFTs, that at least we can see a preview of how that machine would work, how those things would fit together. And one of my biggest questions is that real? What is the economic activity coming out of these metaverse themes or just the exchange and the building of digital objects? Is there a business sector there? Are they small businesses? What are they making? Does it matter? So my question to you is given that you're seeing 30 million transactions or names created, what is the underlying economic activity to which that relates? How would you characterize it?
Well, first let's talk about the metaverse, and let's talk about the industries right now who are leading in that metaverse space. There was just a survey that was published by Statistica, so it's not my data, it's their data, where they looked at, the use of NFTs as a digital asset that could be sold, as a purse or as a digital item, and how industries were looking at that. So they do have fashion as the number one industry that's out there today, but closely behind that is entertainment. So looking at, things like, TV shows or clips of music or that sort of thing, but also sports and hospitality and consumer goods looking at this as well as an opportunity to solve business problems. So I think it's fascinating in my perspective. I don't think I've ever seen fashion kind of leading the charge for an emerging tech before in my career. So I find that really interesting and fascinating. But I think it's because what we're looking at here with Web3 and the metaverse and AI is very creative and artistic. And I think that's why fashion happens to be leading the pack. So one of the areas that we've looked at is like Forever 21. Forever 21, which is a retail fashion brand, they have been, I think, very effectively using the metaverse. And I would say Web 2.5, because they're really not fully on blockchain yet, to create an immersive experience for their next generation customers to create items of value, both digital items as well as phygital, a digital item that becomes a physical item. And so what they've done is they've created this metaverse world. It's really for kind of the new generation coming up, whatever you want to call them, Gen Z. And they wanted to create engagement with their customers. And so they created this metaverse world inside of Roblox, which again is like a Web 2.5 platform for metaverses. And they created a platform where you could design or co-design different creations in that metaverse. They've had a couple of items that they've taken digitally. You could own them digitally inside of Roblox. Or they also took some of the best designs and they've been selling them. Hats that say, forever or ever, t-shirts. And so those are co-created with their customers. And they found that they have increased engagement. They've boosted sales. They've enhanced their brand image by doing this, by co-creating. And then, of course, if you're part of the creation team, you want to buy it. So they've been selling out as well, increasing their customer loyalty. So I find it very fascinating, like who's leading in the space, how are they leading, what are they doing, and how are they selling these digital assets and then combo phygital assets that go along with it. Another example that I really love, Lex, is Lowe's. So Lowe's, as you know, is a consumer goods retailer. They sell hardware items if you're not familiar with Lowe's. And one of the fascinating things that they're doing is with their power tools, there is a problem with theft, especially organized crime theft, which I didn't realize. $700,000 on every $1 billion sold are stolen in some form or fashion. And so they're creating an NFT or a digital twin, as they call it, using AI inside of this NFT for each power tool so that they can potentially, this is an experiment that they're doing, potentially detect theft that occurs. And I love this example because, again, it's combining, Web3 with the NFT, blockchain, metaverse, and AI all together to solve a business challenge. If Lowe's experiment works, it could be a game changer for retail around theft. And I have lots of other examples as well. There's a metal manufacturer out of Italy who has now created a metaverse. They simulate their metal processing as a set of digital items, like they produce a digital necklace or whatever you want to produce out of the metals. They've been able to reduce their waste, of course, by 15%, but also increase their creativity because their employees can go into the metaverse, see the simulation that AI is doing inside of the metaverse, look at the digital assets that are being created and innovate on top of those. I think that this is real, even though we're not supposed to say the M word anymore. But this combination of AI, metaverse, and Web3 is very powerful. And these companies who are experimenting with it, we'll be ahead at the end of the day.
Fascinating stuff. And I love that you picked brands that most people would know. In my mind, it's kind of an overlap between cultural artifacts and young people, but that's certainly not the end of it. And it's very encouraging that you get retailers and brands that are much more mainstream that are also interacting with the technology. Sandy, if we want our audience to learn more about you or about Unstoppable Domains, where should they go?
Yeah, so for Unstoppable, we have unstoppabledomains.com, which is our website. We publish lots of great information. You can sign up for our newsletter, which is a very demanded asset for people to learn about what's happening in this digital identity space. I would also say on Twitter, we're really active on Twitter. But there we go by Unstoppable Web. So it's at Unstoppable Web. So the website is Unstoppable Domains. On Twitter, we're Unstoppable Web. And for me, I'm on all kinds of social media. I'm on Twitter at Sandy_Carter, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I post different, topics on this combination of Web3, metaverse, and AI all the time. So, I'd love to engage some of you in discussions either on LinkedIn or Twitter as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Lex. It was really fun. And you asked a great question and have great phraseology.
Hi, everyone. That's it for this week's episode of the Fintech Blueprint. For more technical deep dives into all things fintech and decentralized finance, check out fintechblueprint.com and grab a free subscription to the newsletter. This is Lex, and I'll see you next time.